Why are things here? What are things at their most fundamental? Are we just a collection of objects, bodies, brains, particles stacked on particles? Well, no. The objects are not the source. They are the painting of the painter, the song of the singer, the art of the artist. At the most fundamental layer, reality is whole, undivided one. But then, why does the whole break? In our last episode, we established that power is the organizing principle of reality, the force through which existence continuously generates greater versions of itself. Power operates through two complementary forces: the rule of opposition, which creates differentiation, and the rule of unification, which draws those differentiations into something greater, a unified whole. But we left a question open. Opposition gives us the mechanism of separation. It tells us that forms arise through differentiation. What it doesn't fully explain is how that differentiation produces complexity, how the breaking of the whole leads not to chaos, but to structure, not just to difference, but to creation. The answer is one word: specificity. Welcome, conscious colleagues, to the philosophy of power, a movement dedicated to understanding the secrets of reality and the power of consciousness. This is the second episode in our series exploring the architecture of reality. Today, we go deeper into the mechanism of opposition. We explore how complexity arises from the principle of specificity. From quantum collapse to the architecture of matter. We've discussed quantum mechanics before, specifically the measurement problem. What causes quantum systems to collapse from superposition into definite states? What turns the probable into the actual? Previously, we proposed that consciousness was key to this collapse. Today, we want to sharpen that claim with a more precise mechanism. The measurement problem is not just about consciousness imposing itself on matter from the outside. Yes, that happens, and we've already discussed extensively how consciousness projects itself to the external world. But there is another mechanism at play here. It is about a specified system encountering an unspecified one. When a definite entity interacts with an indefinite field, the indefinite resolves. The wave function collapses. Possibility crystallizes into fact. This is specificity at the quantum level. Reality begins as a dense unified field, one whole, indefinite fabric of pure potential. Then, a perturbation occurs, symmetry breaks, and in that breaking, complexity becomes possible. The unified whole fractures into smaller parts, not to destroy itself, but to create precision of information, a point of differentiation, a singularity, a thing that can be captured, identified, categorized, where the infinite becomes finite, where the indefinite becomes definite. And this is not a metaphor, it is written into the laws of physics. The four fundamental forces encode this logic. The strong force binds, holding the nucleus together at the subatomic level. The weak force enables decay and separation, allowing particles to transform and break apart, making change possible. Gravity congregates everything back into a single focal point, a localized, coherent structure across vast distances. And electromagnetism governs the interaction that builds everything, from the subatomic, the molecular, to life. But perhaps the most elegant expression of specificity is in Pauli's exclusion principle. We've covered this in our last video, but let's do a quick review. Electrons are, in a sense, indistinguishable, identical particles following the same rules, and yet, no two electrons can occupy the same quantum state simultaneously. They are forced into distinction. Each one must be unique in its configuration. This is not a limitation, it is a feature. Because of this principle, electrons stack into shells. Shells create atoms. Atoms create molecules. Molecules create life. And life eventually creates you. Specificity is not a philosophical abstraction, it is written into the structure of reality itself. Differentiation and unification, the engines of creation. But remember, differentiation does not act alone. As we reviewed earlier, it has a dance partner. The rule of unification ensures that even as things break apart, they are drawn back together. Every opposing force becomes a part of a greater unified whole. The separated pieces eventually reconnect, not as what they were, but as something greater than the sum of their parts. Unification is not the exception, it is the norm. Look at the cosmos. Even entire galaxies are not isolated islands. They are connected by vast filaments of dark matter and gas, extending across hundreds of millions of light years like a cosmic web. We are not a drop in the ocean. We are the ocean in a drop. Specificity creates the building blocks. Unification assembles them into something coherent. Superposition is the unified fabric of all possibilities, and when a specified system interacts with that whole, separation begins. The quantum becomes classical. The possible becomes actual. A new pattern is born. Pattern breaking is not the end, it is always a new beginning. When stars exhaust their fuel and collapse, they explode, scattering heavier elements across the cosmos. Carbon, oxygen, iron, the precise ingredients needed for planets, chemistry, and life. The death of a star is the universe's act of generosity. Life itself follows this principle, constantly reusing, reconfiguring, rebuilding from what came before. Even evolution operates this way. Mass extinctions are followed by explosive diversification. Chaos and order are not enemies, they are the twin engines of creation. In this framework, specificity is the point of configuration where distinction happens, a singularity, a building block of a greater pattern. But specificity does not mean separation, it means precision. A specific thing is a defined thing, one that can now participate meaningfully in a larger structure because it occupies its own unique configuration of existence. Specificity is precision, not isolation. Consciousness, where the universe becomes itself. This brings us back to consciousness. If the whole universe is engaged in an ongoing process of creating more precise, more complex configurations of information, then consciousness is not an accident. It is the apex of that process. The subjective experience is the most specified structure in existence, not just a pattern, a lens, a single concentrated point of perspective that creates a clear differentiation between subject and object, between the one who experiences and the thing being experienced. The evolution of the brain complexifies this, and in humans, something extraordinary emerged: maximized subjectivity, not just awareness, but layered multidimensional self-awareness. But remember, consciousness is a field. maximized subjectivity is an expression of that field, not a possession of humans alone. Dolphins develop unique signature whistles, individual names they generate for themselves that others use to address them specifically, a point of specificity within a social field. Whales transmit song and knowledge across generations, cultural inheritance passed not through DNA, but through memory and relationship. And several other species demonstrate self recognition, the capacity to meet their own reflection and know it as themselves. These are not reflexes, they are the field individuating. Because what we are really talking about is ontological subjectivity. A specificity at its deepest level is not a cognitive achievement, it is a feature of existence itself. We are not decentering humanity, we are expanding the frame. As we explored in our speculative theory of consciousness, awareness does not begin with the brain. The brain is where the field becomes most elaborated, but the field itself is prior, fundamental. A human life begins with a declaration of specificity. I am. And throughout an entire lifetime, that same question is answered, refined, and deepened. Consciousness is not ego, it comes before the ego. It is the pure experiencer, the one who walks the story before it is written. The ego is another point of specificity. It organizes experience into an identity, builds a coherent self from the stream of moments. The two oscillate together, each informing the other. The self is not an illusion, it is a specific pattern that the universe uses to know itself. Reality begins as a pool of pure potential, then specificity enters, a perturbation, a distinction, a point, and from that point, complexity accumulates. Particles, atoms, molecules, cells, organisms, minds, the infinite collapse not into nothing, but into something richer, something capable of experiencing itself. The universe breaks itself into distinct parts so that those parts can reorganize, reflect, and know what they are. Not just becoming, but creating, generating, finding new ways to know itself through every new form that arises. You are not separate from this process. You are this process at its most refined expression. You are the universe that becomes itself. Thank you, conscious colleagues, for lending me your ear. Today, we expanded the rule of opposition through the principle of specificity, seeing how distinction drives complexity, how differentiation and unification operate as twin forces, shaping everything from quantum states to conscious entities. And we can now say something more precise about power itself. If power is the commanding point of reality, the organizing principle, then specificity is its mechanism. Power does not just generate opposition, it generates distinction, precise, irreducible, building block distinction. That is how the will of existence actually builds anything. But specificity doesn't stop at cosmology. It reaches into our choices, our freedom, our will. In the next episode, we will tie all of these threads together, unification, opposition, and specificity, and ask what they mean for panpsychism and the nature of free will. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.